Welcome back, guys, to the channel. In today's episode, just like as I mentioned in the previous episode, we are going to work with the Film Look Creator here inside of Resolve. This was introduced with Resolve 19, and it's going to be very useful for a lot of people to create looks very quickly. Now, something to address is the fact that look development and color grading are two different disciplines. It doesn't mean that if you know how to color grade, you can be really good at look development or vice versa. They require different tools and a bit of experience to master both. However, with the Film Look Creator, we can get our foot in the door and really start to create amazing looks just inside of Resolve. What is great about it is also that it's free with the studio version and works with ACES, works with DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate, and different color spaces that you might want to work inside of Resolve. Okay, with that said, let's get started. Now, you can see that we have a bunch of clips over here. This is all footage that I've shot over the holidays with my Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K. Another thing that I've done before starting this video is that I have added my node tree, as you can see over here, and my in and out node. What does that mean? If I go here on my group pre-clip, you can see that I have my in node. Okay, so basically what that's doing is basically taking me from our camera capture, which as I said was the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K. So I'm taking it from the Gen 5, okay, to my ACES CCT. So my working color space today is going to be in ACES CCT, okay? So that's my in node, as you can see over here. And then if I switch to my timeline, if I go to this section, my timeline, you can see I have an out node, which is the last thing, the last node here in my project. And if I click on my effects, you can see that now I'm going back from my ACES CCT, which is my timeline working space, out to Rec 709 Gamma 2.4, which is going to be the deliverable in SDR today. Okay, so now right before that, I have a node available over here. Once again, I want to reiterate that you probably are wondering, what about all the different nodes over here? Well, so this is the thing. This is color grading, which is that different discipline than look development. What I like to do usually is to apply a look to all the clips. So I kind of see what the overall visual language, what the overall look of our clips is going to be, or could be a movie, could be a scene, could be a sequence. So we can see what the visual style, okay, and the look it's going to be first, and then on top of that, or after that, I should say, then I can start color grading and really adjust on a shot-by-shot basis and make those adjustments and really pinpoint exactly what I'm looking for. So that is very important. I wanted to point that out because some of you might comment, hey, how come I can see, like, you know, you're skipping all these different steps. You went from here, group play clip, went directly to the timeline. Well, because first we're going to impart our look to all the clips, and then we're going to adjust each clip individually, as you can see in my fixed node tree over here that I have for every clip, by the way. This is the same, goes all the same for every clip that we have inside our timeline over here. Okay, so I'm going to start with this. I'm going to keep it here. This is going to be our hero shot for today's video, and I'm going to go back on my timeline. Now we are going to look for our film creator, okay, Film Look Creator. Now in this case, if you go here on effects, you can see I started searching it. So you can just type film look or look, and it's gonna pop right here inside of this tab. And now I can double click or drop this into our node, and you can see that something happens. Now, the first thing I'm going to do here, I am going to rename this to FLC for Film Look Creator, okay? So we know what this is. And remember one more time, this is happening as the last step right before our out node that is taking us to Rec 709. Okay, so now I'm going to open this here on the effects. And another thing I'm going to do, because now we can see too much going on over here, I'm going to press Shift F. So we have this view, okay? So now we can focus more on what's happening to our image. Now, the Film Look Creator, by the way, the first thing you're going to see over here, it's this red dot. Now, if pressing that, it allows you to activate it or deactivate it, which is essentially the same thing as activating or deactivating the node, by the way, that you can easily do over here as well by pressing Command D, as you can see. Okay, and I am going to press Shift F again. And now the next thing we're going to do, we're going to look at every single parameter over here. Now, the first thing we see is the preset, as you can easily see over here, and it says default 65mm. Now we can change and go through these if you wanted to. You can see you have cinematic, you have nostalgic. So this is doing a bunch of different things to our image. However, if you're doing a professional grade, probably this is not very optimal. This is for something more quick and dirty if you're really trying to get things fast. So for something like a home video or like some passion footage that you shot or whatever, anything of that sort. But I wouldn't use this for professional grading. So for me personally, I'm going to go here on clean slate. Clean slate basically tells us don't add anything. I don't want any presets. I want a clean slate. Okay, now you have also our color blend and effects blend. So these parameters determine how much of our color blend or effects blend, which we can see down here, okay, color and effects, all of that is down here. How much of that do you want? So in this case, I'm going to keep it to 1, so all the way up. And then you have this button here that says 3D LUT compatible. Okay, so this is for LUTs that are 3D LUTs compatible. That basically means that if you're adding any sort of texturized, okay, all of that type of stuff that we see down here, which is, by the way, it's awesome. Okay, it's basically telling us if you want to check this, we are going to get rid of all these things right now, all these textural and spatial effects just for the moment being. So I can check that, and now I can focus only on the actual color settings, our split tone, and then after I'm done with that, I can uncheck that and finish up and do the rest of all of my spatial and all of my textural effects that I want to add. Okay, so I'm gonna check this right now, and so we can focus on fewer things at a time. So I think that's better for our brain to learn things and sort of like really get to know what each parameter does. Now, the next thing we're going to see here is that we have a film look blend. This basically tells us of the film look, how much are we blending into our footage? 0, obviously we're not adding anything. And if I go to 1, you can see that something happens. Now, to easily see this, you can see here, if we go on our core look, this is going to change the core look of our film look creator. That means that for now is a cinematic. However, we have this Rochester. You can see that that's doing something different. You have this one, Akasaka. Okay, so these are really changing the core of our look, vintage, which is really nice. I like this, what it's doing to our image. However, for me personally, I'm going to go with this Rochester right now. And you can see that that's probably my preferred one for this clip specifically. And with the film look blend, now you can see if I keep sliding it between left to right, it's not a really huge difference because we don't have many effects yet on it. But if you look at this here at the door, at the wooden door over here, you can see that if I keep sliding, there is a bit of a difference happening right there. So now I'm going to keep it here in probably around 5 point, somewhere around halfway through, okay, just over there. And we're going to start with our color settings, okay? Now, the first thing that I want to talk about is here the exposure. Now, I virtually never use the exposure here in the Film Look Creator, and you might wonder, why is that? Well, that is because that is an operation that you want to do when you're color grading. You want to do that on a clip-by-clip basis. Every clip is going to have different exposure. If you're working on a film or a documentary, different scenes require different amount of lights or different moods and tones, and the story is different. So that is not something I want to do overall to my look, okay? So I don't want to impart that into every clip that I have. So I usually leave this alone, but basically this is pretty self-explanatory. You can just move this, all right? And you see what it does. It's basically adjusting exposure. As I said, I virtually never use that here inside the Film Look Creator. Now, something that I could probably use here inside the Film Look Creator is the contrast. Even though I'd like to add my own contrast curve, all right, that is my preferred way of working with contrast. This is nice to have over here, and I can find some uses for it, okay? If we want to increase contrast or decrease contrast, that's really up to you and what you're looking for in your footage. So in this case, I'm actually going to add a little bit to something like that, and we can see what this is already doing. So not very much, but this is adding a little bit of contrast just like that. All right, and then we have our highlights. Okay, this I never touch also because that is something, you see, it's affecting our highlights, especially here in the sky. This is again very shot by shot, on a shot by shot basis adjustment. So I virtually never ever adjusted here. Then you have our fade. This is going to work a bit raising those shadows. So to show this better to you, if we go here from our vector scope to our waveform, you can see that by increasing the fade, what that's doing to my shadows, okay? We are increasing that and protecting them from clipping down to that 0 point, okay? So we can raise them here, if you wanted to. I virtually never use this, once again, because I make all of these adjustments with my contrast curves. I prefer to work that way. Okay, so that is not something I would use here. White balance, tint, absolutely never use these, because once again, I have my balance node that I do on a shot-by-shot basis, and I balance based on what the specific shot requires. So I never use these, but basically pretty self-explanatory, okay? You can add tint. Over here we're adding green, obviously minus goes to up minus 150 and then plus 150. Pretty standard green magenta, okay? Tint adjustment. And then we have our white balance, as you can see. If we want to white balance our footage, I'm not going to touch that as well, because as I said, I do that in a shot-by-shot basis. Then we have one of my favorite sliders over here, which is the subtractive saturation. Okay, this is awesome, and it's something that I really, really like here inside of the FilmLook Creator, because this is going to allow us to add saturation, but this is subtractive saturation, so it's more filmic. By increasing saturation, we're not also increasing luminance, which is really nice, okay? Because this is really adding that saturation that we want. Now I'm going purposely a little bit too far, so you can see what that's doing. You can see how we're adding to these colors over here. This is so nice. And then we can also add our richness, which is something that I also use. And obviously, if you add, now this is, we're pushing it a little bit too far. If you go to 0, you can see we're taking life out of all these colors over here. So this is something that you might want to be a bit careful with, and sort of kind of more of a feel-based, okay, type of relationship between the subtractive saturation and the richness over here. So in this case, I'm going to keep it like this, so we can see that it's making a huge impact on our image already. Now the subtractive saturation, I'm also going to take that down a little bit to something like that. And then we have our bleach bypass. There is no explanation needed for this. I think virtually everyone knows what a bleach bypass does. It adds this very greedy look to our image, and obviously if we go all the way, this is taking really the colors out of our image basically. But this is something that you have over here, and this is so nice that it can be implemented here with a slider. Okay, so in this case I'm going to keep that to 0 because I don't want to change anything in the bleach bypass. And we are going to now go into our next section, which is the split tone. Now the split tone, it's that element that really adds that filmic characteristic to your image. This has been done now for a very long time, and basically what it does is, traditionally at least, we are adding cooler tones to our shadows and warmer tones to our highlights. Then again, rules can be broken, and you can add all different type of hues if you want to. However, this is something that has traditionally worked, especially in Hollywood, for many years now. So I'm going to add this enable split tone, and you can see by adding this, nothing happens. Well, that nothing is happening because now we can change the amount, which tells us how much of that do you want to add. So I'm going to go all the way to 1 now, just to show you how extreme this is. And we can see that we're adding a bit of these warmer tones into our highlights and these cooler tones into our shadows. And that's creating a bit of that really strong split toning scheme going on into our image over here. Now, the hue angle, this is something that I probably can show you better here by changing from our waveform to our vector scope. The hue angle is going to change our hue angle. As it says here, basically we are going to shift which colors do we really want, okay? Which hues do we want to affect? Now, obviously we're getting also something crazy over here because we have our amount to, it's really high. So I'm going to do something like that. And you can see that now that it's really affecting our image in different ways. In this case, I'm going to keep it to something like that. And another thing you can do here is the pivot. Now, the pivot allows you to really change that crossover between our shadows and our highlights. And we can get something really nice with our pivot as well. Okay, especially if we're pivoting to different type of, I'm going to change the hue angle to something like that. And then, you know, we can pivot this to different values, as you can see. But this is something that I would really be careful with how much I'm adding, because it can get out of hand really fast. As you can see, I'm playing with these right now just to show you what they do, and you can get kind of like a cool sort of a split toning scheme by playing a bit more with what we have here. Okay, in this case, I am going to not pivot this and keep the hue angle to the way it was and add a little bit of amount here on our split toning. You can see how much that's doing, maybe a bit too much, do something like that. And now we really are adding more of that split toning scheme to our image, and it's really becoming more filmic. Now, once I've worked on all of my color, now I can reactivate that 3D LUT compatible option over here that we checked earlier. So I'm going to uncheck that. And now it shows you all the different features that we have here in the Film Look Creator. Now we have our vignette over here. So now it enables us to add our vignette, and then we can add more or less the amount that you want. Now, this is not something that, once again, I would do here because it's very shot-by-shot on a shot-by-shot basis. I wouldn't want to do this on a look. I prefer to actually do this on a shot-by-shot basis because, as I said, I like to vignette certain things or hide other things, use power windows. So that's not something that for me is optimal here in the Film Look Creator. So I'm going to uncheck this personally. But then feel free to experiment with this, and you guys, once again, you can play here with the amount of it, so if you want more or less, and then also the size. Okay, so this is we don't see almost anything, and here it's like really heavy. So play with that and see what works for you. For me personally, as I said, I am going to uncheck that. Then you have highlightation. Highlightation, actually, this is one of the additions to this new update or the Film Look Creator that really makes a big difference compared to what we had in Resolve before. So here I'm going to check that, enable highlightation, and as you can see here, obviously I'm going to go to something crazy like that, and you can see what's happening over here. You see the highlightation showing in our image. Obviously this is at 0. Look at the fringes on our edges, and this is very strong. So that's adding a lot of highlightation to our image, as you can see. Okay, then again, also you can change the radius. Look at that. That's like something that I'm going crazy with it just to show you guys what you can get. And then you can also change the saturation if you wanted to. I'm going to keep it the way it was. And you can also change the hue, by the way. So is it shifting more towards these colors or a bit more towards yellow orangey? So you can change those as well. So I'm going to reset that and then reset our radius. And so the amount here, it's a bit too strong. So you want to go to, obviously this is without it, this is with it. So something. All right, so that's our highlightation. Then you have our bloom. This is awesome, okay? Adds bloom, so that's softness to our bright areas or highlights, okay? Obviously more bloom, and then you can also change the radius of it. So this is going all the way to 1. You can see how it's softening our highlights here on the window. Now, we're going purposely too far with it, just so that you can see what that's doing. Okay, so that's something you want to experiment also with. So maybe you might like an image like this, all right, with that bloom. You can see this is before, this is the after, all right? So that's something that you can determine, and also I can change the amount here of bloom, how much we want. That's something you can determine based on your footage, okay? So I'm going to keep the bloom because why not? Doesn't look bad. And then we have our grain. Next, the grain is also really, really nice. Great addition to the Film Look Creator. Grain, here we have our presets, right? So we can change to 65 millimeter or 35 millimeter and all the different presets. I'm going to keep it to 35. And then we can change the amount of grain. So obviously, this will be going crazy to something like that, and also the size, just to show you guys what we're getting here. But that's something that you can also play with, and that's obviously depending on your project and what kind of look are you trying to achieve with it. So you can change the amount, the size, the softness, saturation, and image defocus. Pretty standard operations. Finally, you have our flicker, our gate weave, film gate, and these are virtually, I never use them unless I am trying to create a film look, or if I'm trying to get that photochemical or really create that type of look for a specific project or a specific short film or a movie. So that's not something I would use generally on a traditional look, let's put it like this. It's a bit more specific, more specialized, I should say. So you have those as well. So you can enable the flicker over here, you can enable the gate weave, so that's the registration of our film, and then our film gate. All right, so if you're trying to get a film gate, so you can see that now. I'm gonna go back to fit. You can change the film gate as well. So now in this case I don't want to add that, by the way, you can change the ratio on our height as well, and then the padding as well if you wanted to. Okay, so that's really up to you what you want to create. But in this case, I am going to uncheck this one, the film gate. I am going to uncheck the gate weave as well and the flicker, because I don't need those. So you can see that once you create a film look here inside of Resolve, I am going to press Shift F just to go back. Now you can look how that's affecting most of your images. Okay, so I'm going to close here the effects and see what's happening. If I go here on my clips, you can see that that's actually nice, guys. And that's something that we did in a few minutes, played around a little bit with our sliders just to get a general overview. But you can see that what that's doing, that's actually really nice, right? And we did that so quickly. Maybe it's a bit strong in terms of halation here and grain. However, that's nice. And I can see also how it's affecting my image here. This is the before, this is the after, right? So these are some of my clips that I have over here. That's another one that I really love. But what you're going to do most of the time, it's going to be you're going to go through all your clips and see how that's affecting what you shot, right? Because remember, a film look, it's not something that is specific to just this one clip that we created on, but we are going through everything that we shot and look how things are working. So oftentimes what's going to happen, and I assure you that's going to happen, it's going to be like, oh, I don't know that's nice on this. That's not, maybe we pushed it too far or we pushed it too little. So now I got to go back and make some adjustments. And that's really happens to everybody. Every colorist has to go through this. So you want a look, right, that holds for all the clips. And trust me, it's easier said than done. Okay, so that is something that takes a bit of practice, takes a little bit of time to really master. However, you're going to see, and it's pretty normal, that you create a look that maybe looks really nice with this clip, okay, or maybe with this clip. But then you're going to start realizing that maybe for other clips doesn't work. So then you're going to go back and you're going to start, adjusting things till maybe works for, instead of 3 clips, all of the 100 clips, or at least 98 of them, and then make individual adjustments to the clips that, is not as effective. Okay, let's put it like that. Once again, once I'm done with this, usually, so I'm looking at this clip, for example, I see that it's too dark. Then I would go and start my color grading process. So I'll go here, my exposure, I'd go on my HDR, and then maybe go up by 1.5 stops. Okay, let's try that. All right, so I'm brightening now my image, as you can see, and then I'm gonna look at the other clips and start doing the same thing. Then again, this is the process that we are accustomed to. So work our exposure, our contrast, our balance, and start making all these different adjustments. But I want to reiterate one more time, I don't like to make some of those slider adjustments here in the Film Look Creator, specifically for things such as adjusting the exposure, okay? So that exposure, that highlight, adjusting things like the contrast, because I prefer to do these things here. Okay, if I can, I prefer to do it while I'm color grading. And then the balance, right? So I don't want to change that tint and white balance and, color temperature, all these things, because I prefer to do these on a shot by shot basis, right? Same with saturation, all right? So I prefer to do that here. So this is the Film Look Creator, and I would highly suggest you guys to test it out for yourself. Play with it, all right, and see how that works for you. Now, at first, you should play with all the sliders and see what they do, okay? So just look at, pick one image, 2 images, and see what it's doing to it, all right? So maybe you want to go negative with specific values or positive with others. See what it does. And once you learn the tool, then after that, you can start working with intent. When working with intent basically means that you want to start looking at story. What are we trying to achieve with the story? What are we trying to say? What are we trying to, what's on the page that we want our audience to focus on? How can we achieve that with color and cinematography? Okay, so how can we bring that up here in post-production? So those are some of the elements that then you should focus after you learn a certain tool. But it's very important to blend the creative and the technical together. Oftentimes we only think that this is just creative work. However, it's not. I think it's more of a mix of both. It's creative and it's technical, and it doesn't necessarily mean that if you're a very creative person, you cannot be technical, or that if you're technical, you can't be creative. These are just different aspects that, if blended together, creates for a stronger image. Thank you guys for watching, and let me know in the comments if there is anything else that I have missed, or that is, if you have any questions questions, or if there is anything that you might be confused by, or some suggestions. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.